everybody. Welcome to the second episode of the MMA Podcast. We're excited to talk about lots of topics. Last Friday, we had UFC on FX3. We actually have two fighters from that card coming on, Eddie Wineland and Charlie Brenneman. We're also going to be talking about Viviano Fernandez refuting he's been signed by the UFC. George St. Pierre's future, may be fighting this November against Carlos Condit. Jose Aldo pulls out a UFC 149, and Shogun refuses to fight Glover Teixeira. We also talk about The Ultimate Fighter, Dana announcing next season will be taped, and a slew of other topics, MMA and UFC. We're glad you joined in. Let's do it.
Let's go! We did it, mama. We did it. We did it for the love of the game. We did it, mama. We did it. I did it for.
And welcome to the second episode. We are pumped to be here bringing you everything MMA. Before we get started, let's shoot out some thanks. Huge thanks to both Eddie Wineland and Charlie Brenneman, who will be coming on the podcast. Eddie will be on at about 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern. Charlie's going to be on at 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern, in about an hour and a half, respectively. Before then, we have a slew of stuff to talk about, as long as having a bunch of stuff to talk to them about for the UFC 3 card that they just got done with. We also want to thank our partners, MMA at Work. They actually had Tom DeBlas on last week. That was a great interview. We want to give a shout-out to MMA Mental, our buddies over at the UK, MMAmental.com. If you haven't heard their interview with Uncle Creepy yet, definitely go check that out. And, of course, don't forget to put in your MMA fantasy picks on the MMA Playground. How you doing today, Chris?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Another day in paradise, and what a solid lineup we have today. I'm super stoked. Yeah, another awesome day. We get to talk to a couple great UFC fighters, who just fought. I'm really pumped to talk to them. And if you want to throw us any comments, you can tweet us at the MMA Podcast. Definitely don't forget to visit themamapodcast.com. And our call-in number is 646-378-1046. We're going to try and get to callers at the end of this hour, but we got a lot to talk about between now and then before we get Wineland on an hour. So without any further ado, we got to start talking about that UFC on FX3 card. There were a lot of pretty nice finishes on that one. Yeah, man, that was a wonderful card, just top to bottom. The prelims were pretty great, and that main card really delivered with some back and forth moments in all the fights. Really, I mean, every single fight lived up to some hype. I thought a lot more decisions would take place, but we got some really good action in the entirety of the main card.
Yeah, it was really good. Before we start at the top of the card with Pierce Rocha, I just want to say it's awesome we're getting Eddie Wineland on the card, because I think he had the moment of the night. He was busted open, giant gash over his eye. I mean, he was losing ounces of blood out of his head, and somehow with that huge cut on his face, he is the first person to ever finish Scotty Jorgensen with strikes, finishes him with a KO in the second round. That was insane.
Goat's vagina on his forehead.
That's a good Rogan-esque way to describe that giant goat vagina-esque gash above his eye. Easily the gnarliest cut I've ever seen on somebody who won the fight. I've seen some pretty gross cuts, but usually it's, by the loser. He's probably kind of lucky the doctor didn't stop that, because if it did get stopped, he may have put it into it. That was a gnarly cut.
It's all blood flow, man. The blood was kind of getting into his eyes, but it wasn't directly flowing into his eyes. It was going around in the eye socket, so I think that's why it wasn't stopped, and for a good reason. I mean, look at what happened. The results talk for themselves.
I know it wasn't getting into his eyes, but you could see his skull through that gash. I think they might have stopped it either way. He had needed at least a dozen stitches in that bad boy after the fight was over. We actually have a picture of it. If you want to go to themmapodcast.com, you can see that gnarly stitched up gash and a big smile from the winner, Eddie Wineland, who we'll have on in just about an hour. Let's start off with that Pierce Rocha fight. Rocha, I don't know how to say it.
Hockey hokey.
It was a kind of interesting decision. It was announced a split decision, 30-27, 30-27, 27-30, which you rarely ever see, but it was actually announced that it was really a unanimous decision. There was a mistabulation, which how ironic for that to happen at the rematch of Johnson beating McCall, which wouldn't have even had to be necessary if the judges, I believe the fight was in Australia, but if those judges would have added everything up.
Oh, the original fight. I'm sorry.
Florida or Australia.
You're
right. It would have made a lot more sense if they added everything up wrong in the second fight. I live in Florida, but people here cannot add numbers.
No comment on that, man. I got family out there.
All of my family lives here. I've lived here my entire life. I grew up in Tampa Bay, moved to St. Augustine, moved to Gainesville. People here are fucking stupid.
Whoa! There aren't any big-time fighters that train out there like Thiago Alves or Thiago Silva.
Oh, no, I mean, them not necessarily. I don't think I'm stupid, but I think a good majority of the people who live in Florida, if you were to take an IQ test, they would score dramatically lower than the average person in this country or the world or in any other subgroup of people, kind of bottom of the totem pole.
I'm not going to argue with you on that. I mean, the South, let's be real, sometimes they get a little ridiculous with their IQ, but I'm also one to think that I've kind of lived all over the U.S., at least like the middle of the country and the West Coast, and I think there's dumb people everywhere. You can't get away from them. It's just how they're dumb. Are they mentally dumb with their IQ, or are they just mentally dumb with the way they dress? You'll find them everywhere, dude. It's all over.
Mentally dumb. That's a nice phrase. The mentally dumb people of Florida were actually able to add everything up right on Johnson McCall, but they screwed up Pierce Rocha. What are you going to do? It was really a 30-27 down the board fight. Kind of as everyone expected. Pierce put up a great fight against Josh Koscheck, even though he lost that, and he was able to get that double leg, put Rocha on his back, and really do what he wanted to do. So enough about that fight. Let's go back to the Wineland-Jorgensen fight. Holy shit. That was the one moment of the card where I leapt up out of my seat, because I was watching that fight. I had a friend over. We were about to go and do something. I don't know. I had DVR'd a lot of the fight, but this actually was the one fight that I caught live. And I was watching it, and I was saying, I don't see how Wineland can win this, to be honest. Jorgensen's got an iron chin. His only losses have come by decision or submission. Guy doesn't get knocked out. Wineland's got a huge gash. I don't see it going to the end of this fight. Somehow Wineland just connects on a 1-2, throws a right cross that puts Jorgensen on his butt. And I believe Troy Wall was the referee. He shoved Wineland off, giving him the victory in the second round. That was so crazy.
Yeah, it was incredible. I think Wineland has had a real tough run lately in the UFC. Not from his performances, but who he's been stacked up against. His first fight in the UFC, Uriah Faber for a number one contender fight. And then he fights Joseph Benavidez, who obviously is amazing at 135 and 125. And then he fights Jorgensen, and if you look at all these guys, they're basically the same fighter. Obviously, they have their differences, but they're power-punching wrestlers, lifelong wrestlers who have learned how to punch really frickin' hard. And the guy has been just stacked up with them, and he's had some close losses to some, cream of the crop, the guys at the top. And I thought this fight was back and forth and amazing, and Eddie has that style. He says he has a Greco-Roman background, which I never knew about until he brought it up before the fight, or I think it was after the fight. But he was letting it slip and rip. He was slipping, away from punches, ripping some of his own, and I think Eddie Wineland, bar none, hits harder than anyone at 135.
Renan Barão wasn't able to finish Scott Jorgensen. Scott Jorgensen brought Barão, who's going to be fighting for the title against Faber next month, to a decision, and Wineland was able to stop him. I think, if anything's a testament to Wineland's punching power, it's the fact that he was able to put this iron-chinned guy on his ass and finish the fight. And you're absolutely right. He's fought the who's who in his only UFC fights. He fought Faber, Benavidez, and Jorgensen. Faber's potentially about to be the 135 champion. Benavidez, everybody's favoring him to be the next 125 champion. He's easily a top 10 bantamweight, and I'm really excited to see who they're going to put him up against next. Both of us are going to ask him about that. I think a fighter like Michael McDonald, another top 10 guy who's got a good record, the winner of that fight, might be eligible for a number one contendership fight. Another fight, like you were saying before, was Yves Dubois.
Yeah, Yves is coming off of 3 decision wins, but he actually, he had a less than spectacular run at featherweight, and he drops down to 135, and he's winning. I mean, it may not be impressive wins, but he also isn't getting his butt kicked. He's going out there, Yves is doing it, and he is putting on a show every time he goes out there. His fight with Y.L. Watson, the Gazelle, was more of a glorified sparring match, but he had a fight before that. I can't think of it on the top of my head. Sorry, guys. I'm usually good at that. But then he comes out and he puts, kind of a beating on Jeff Hoagland, man. He went out there and Hoagland, it's a testament to his ability to recover, but he was punishing Hoagland for 3 rounds straight. So it's not saying that he can't finish a fight. He was trying his darndest, and I think that would be a great test for Yves Dubois going up against Eddie Wineland, because they're both going to stand and bang, and Eddie has the kind of raw power to really test Yves Dubois' chin.
Yeah, and a little side programming note. Next week we're probably going to have Hoagland on, so definitely tune in then. But no, I couldn't agree with you more. That would be another great matchup. Wineland, he's definitely about to piece together some wins. Those fights against Faber and Benavidez, those are 2 of the toughest guys you can fight at 135, and now both of them are where they should be fighting for titles. So, I mean, aside from those titans of the division, Faber, Benavidez, Cruz, I definitely see Wineland string together a few wins in the 135 division.
Absolutely, and I wanted to bring something up before we move on. There was a moment in the Benavidez-Wineland fight where Benavidez went for a flying knee and arced over Wineland's head, who was way taller than him, and landed almost at the top of the cage. That was some crouching tiger, Ip Man kung fu shit right there. And I just remember watching that fight and going, okay, so this is for real. Eddie Wineland, if he can survive that, 10-foot-high flying knee from Joseph Benavidez, there's only great things to come. And he's also a double knockout of the night winner back-to-back. Joseph
Benavidez is the reason the UFC created the flyweight division as of recent, just because of that reason. He's a complete freakish athlete, amazing wrestler, can throw some bombs, and is one of those few fighters at 135 where it's like, yeah, he's a kind of small 135er, if that makes any sense. But no, the guy's just a little dynamo.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to DJ. As much as I'm not a huge fan, I'm looking forward to him squaring off with Jobi-Wan Kenobi for the inaugural flyweight championship.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed Ian McCall didn't win as well, because I feel he won that first fight. I feel the third round in that was a 10-8, and what a crazy moment that was. And Johnson McCall won the waning moments of the final round, where McCall's got Johnson's back, and Johnson's kind of just looking down at the ground, and McCall's throwing down bombs, and he just stops for a second to, and then he starts punching him again.
He looks up, "Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?"
Definitely excited to talk about that in a couple of minutes, too. That fight did not go the way I thought. Ian McCall was not able to impose his wrestling on Demetrius Johnson like I thought he'd be able to. But before we talk about that, let's move on to Josh Neer versus Mike Pyle. I had Neer winning this fight. You know, Neer's a great submission artist, trains with the Diaz brothers. Josh Neer versus Nick Diaz is one of my favorite UFC fights of all time. And Pyle has definitely put together a few impressive wins, but he's known to be a little shaky at times. And I thought Neer was going in for the kill in the first round. He was pushing Pyle back. He had Mike Pyle's back against the cage, just like his teammate Nick Diaz likes to do to people. Neer was boxing him up with his opponent's back against the cage, but Pyle, off his back foot, was just able to put in a nasty 1-2. I mean, just this single right hand knocks Neer completely cold. Pyle just walks away before referee Chris Adams even can step in, and gets a really amazing knockout. And I think there were 4 seconds left. Yeah, it was 4:56 the first round. So amazing.
That was absolutely incredible. Pyle reminds me a lot of Campman. It's a guy that we always underrate. I mean, when you look at Campman, you look at Pyle, you never think title contention material, but they never fail to deliver. Sometimes in big fights they fail, but they always come back. You're looking at Campman now, possibly fighting for the interim championship. And Mike Pyle, although he doesn't have any area in his game where you're super impressed other than submissions, he proved tonight that hard work and really good technique can win a fight. He came in there and he wung that punch, and he doesn't have that knockout power of like a Paul Daly, but it was perfect timing, perfect placement, puts Neer out, and Neer is, like you said, he's an honorary Diaz brother. That guy comes out, rips to the body, he's mean, he's in your face, he's mean mugging you, he's putting his hands up like, what bitch, and that was just really incredible to see Neer get put out that way, because that guy is amazing.
Yeah, and both of them, you look at their records and you wonder why they aren't at that elite level of their division. You know, Mike Pyle 6-2 in his last 8 fights. Those only 2 losses coming to elite welterweights, Jake Ellenberger and Rory McDonald. Josh Neer's in the same boat. He had just put an 8-1 string together before that. His only loss to Eddie Alvarez before he popped back up to the welterweight division, and had recently beat Keith Wisniewski and Dwayne Ludwig. But yeah, what a fight. Pyle reminded everybody last Friday, hey, don't sleep on me. You know, my only losses are to really, really great welterweights who could potentially be fighting for the welterweight title in the next year. I mean, even though Ellenberger just came off of that loss, I don't think the UFC is going to punish him too much as far as caliber of opponents, because I really think Ellenberger rocked Campman as bad as Campman rocked him in the first round. Just for some reason, maybe it was because the referee thought that knee really inflicted a lot of damage, but the ref jumped in to stop the fight.
I disagree, Jake. I think that first round, Campman took a huge shot, and he fell back, and Ellenberger started ripping those punches, but Campman was rolling with the punches, trying to regain guard, trying to hold his own. He was never out. His eyes never rolled back except for that first punch. Whereas when Campman hit those knees on the replay, when they showed a different angle, Ellenberger actually closed his eyes, grimaced, and rolled over. And I think that's the difference. The ref saw that. With Campman, Kampmann was still in the fight. Ellenberger clearly was hurt, and I think that made the difference.
He definitely was hurt, and what else are you going to do when you get kneed in the face other than grimace? But if the ref had maybe waited just another 5 seconds to pull Kampmann off, I would have been fine with it. But he really didn't even let Kampmann get in another shot. I mean, he kneed Ellenberger. Ellenberger was still conscious as Kampmann jumped into Ellenberger's guard. Ellenberger put his hands up and looked like he was about to be intelligently defending himself. Maybe could have, sprawled out of the situation somehow. The ref did not give it a single second before Kampmann could inflict any damage in the guard. Just pulled him off him, and I would have loved to see whether or not Ellenberger could have defended himself in those few seconds. What exactly would have happened?
I think the difference here was the very end when the ref waved it off. When he came in, what happened was, if you watch it again, Ellenberger pulled both of his hands up in front of his face. He was turned sideways away from Kampmann. He's not facing Kampmann with his hands up. He's turned away. That's not intelligently defending yourself. And he also collapsed afterwards. So Kampmann walked away. Ellenberger collapsed and grabbed his face. And that, I think, says more than defending yourself. I think that basically rolling over and just completely just exhausted and collapsing, I think that really says a lot more than what happened with Kampmann in that first round. That's just my opinion. Agree to disagree, I guess.
Yeah, it was definitely controversial, and people were making arguments on both sides, which I see where you are coming from, and it definitely is the ref's duty to stop the fight when he feels that the other fighter is in danger. I think he could have given it a few more seconds. Plus, I have to like the guy because his name's Jake too.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
The Jake bias.
There it is. Same name.
I love that. But yeah, anything else on Mike Pyle, Josh Neer before we move on to the co-main?
I think we've said as much as we can say.
We have said quite a bit. Eric Silva, I really think he is an elite welterweight. He looked amazing in the co-main and has been on an awesome streak. Defeated Charlie Brenneman, who we'll have on in about an hour, via rear naked choke, 4.5 minutes into the first round.
Yeah, what a fight, man. Eric Silva, that guy is scary. I would not want to be behind a Hooters, smoking a cigarette and see that guy come up and talk crap to him. You don't want to do that because that guy means business. He's chewing on his mouthpiece before the fight. He's in your face every second. And Charlie Brenneman put on a real good wrestling clinic for sure, but Eric Silva, I think, has that it factor that just makes him something special.
Yeah, he definitely is skilled, but I don't know if I'd put him in that division of scary-looking guys with Vanderlei Silva and whatnot. Dude's a pretty boy. Come on.
I think he turns something on. He may be a good-looking fella, but there's just some switch that he pulls where if you're looking at him across that octagon, which neither of us have ever experienced, if you're looking at that guy and he's chewing on the mouthpiece like a bear or a wolf, just that's scary to me, man. That's scary.
I wonder what hair product he uses.
I would have to say LA Looks.
LA Looks, probably that or something that's acai berry based. I know that's really
so nationalist.
But every fighter from Brazil wears a purple acai berry hat. I don't know what it is, but literally I want to say about 98.6% of UFC fighters from Brazil are sponsored by them. They have a monopoly on them.
By the way, I don't want to correct you here on a small issue, but it's actually pronounced acai.
Acai. Thank you. This was today's culture lesson with Chris.
You're welcome, world.
Yeah, it's like that Boni Acai brand. I don't know. They must be making a lot of money because they sponsor a lot of great guys. You see Dos Santos, Anderson, the Nogueira brothers, all the way down. Sporting that gear.
Well, it's perfect for their training because it's got loads of antioxidants.
That is a key component when it comes to training mixed martial arts. You want to have no oxidants.
Get them out.
That was a nice on-air burp. That was actually really ironic because I was talking about antioxidants. I was burping up air, but I guess it wasn't oxygen. No one? No one?
Nobody. Nope. You officially are eating crap on stage.
This is great pod when I talk about burps and the kind of air that comes out in my burps, don't you?
You know what? It's real, Jake. Just let it happen.
But, moving on, which I think would be a good idea at this point. We had the main event, Mighty Mouse versus Uncle Creepy. Johnson winning the unanimous decision, which I think everybody agreed with. Wasn't any controversy in this one. I was really surprised McCall wasn't able to impose his wrestling nearly as much as he did in the first fight, the first stanza with Demetrius Johnson. Every time Ian had him in the clinch or had him in a takedown, Mighty Mouse would be up, back on his feet within 10-15 seconds.
Yeah, it was essentially the first fight, but without as much damage. It seemed to me like both guys just wanted to not lose more than they wanted to win. I'm not saying they didn't come to fight, but it just seemed like that first fight left a sour taste in their mouth, and they trained hard to win, and not lose. And essentially, I think Mighty Mouse is funny in the pre-fight video where they're talking about how they're going to win. Mighty Mouse said he was going to knock out Ian McCall with a head kick. He's like, shin to his face. That's how it's going to happen. And I look back at Demetrius Johnson's victories, and they're all by decision. I don't think he has enough meat on his bones to, essentially finish somebody. I mean, anyone can finish anyone, but I think DJ trained speed and accuracy more than power. And ultimately, I think this fight it didn't really finish it, because the first fight was way on the side of Ian McCall. The second fight, McCall didn't really look like he was actually there to fight too much, and I think a third fight's in order down the road. Maybe Demetrius fights Joseph Benavidez, and then McCall has another fight, and then fights the winner of that fight.
Yeah, the fact is this 125 division is still such in its infancy that I don't see a possibility that Ian McCall doesn't fight for the title within the next year, because aside from Johnson, which, most people believe that Benavidez is going to defeat Johnson. Benavidez is, I think, already a huge favorite in Vegas. But other than McCall, Johnson, and Benavidez, you don't have many guys. You have the fellow that Benavidez just defeated. His name doesn't come to my mind right now. You have John Dodson. You have a few guys who are pretty good, but you don't nearly have the depth you have at any other division. And actually, while we were watching Johnson McCall, we watched a tape version of it. You compared this fight to another recent fight, and I won't get into it. I'll let you rant on it, because I definitely think it was a very apt comparison as Ian McCall pushed the action.
I am completely lost here. Which fight are we talking about?
While we were watching the fight, you kept on comparing McCall Johnson to the Diaz-Condit fight.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm sorry about that.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was essentially one guy is fast and is evasive while the other guy is pressing the action. And it just goes to show you that the judges are all looking for something else. You got three people. They're all looking at different things. They all have different experience in judging. They all have different knowledge in MMA. So when I watch a fight and one guy is evasive, but the other guy is pressing the action, the guy who's pressing it and is landing harder shots, I'm going to go for that. Like Diaz was pressing the action. He was hitting harder. He was in the other guy's face. The other guy's running and is landing nice combos, but he's not stunning the other guy, and that's just the way that I see it. Me personally, I always go for the guy that's pushing it and the guy that's running away, unless he's rocking the other guy. That just seems like a worse strategy to me to judge on.
Yeah, it seemed like for a good majority of the fight, Johnson was picking his strikes, which honestly I've kind of yet to make up my mind on that strategy, because you can't blame the fighter. You can't blame a guy like Carlos Condit for employing that that strategy against Nick Diaz. And at the same time, people who call Condit a point fighter, shut your mouth right now. Carlos Condit has one of the most devastating finish ratios in mixed martial arts, let alone the UFC. He has so many knockouts, so many submissions. Yes, he did employ a kind of questionable game plan against Diaz, where he actually did do a lot of damage. Look at pictures of Nick Diaz after that fight. Diaz was cut up, but if you do watch it, a good amount of those clips are Diaz pushing the action, throwing punches, walking forward, stalking Carlos Condit literally, and Condit throwing a punch, circling away, running back, throwing a kick, circling out, which circling out is an incredibly intelligent strategy against Nick Diaz, because more than any other fighter in the UFC, Nick Diaz's MO is to put your back against the cage and box the shit out of you. While Ian McCall, I don't know if he's as deadly a boxer as, say, a Nick Diaz. The strategy seemed to work just as well for Demetrius Johnson. He was throwing punches, circling away, but like I said before, where I think he won the fight, I gave the first and third round to Johnson, the second to McCall, where I think he won the fight. Either the first or the third round, McCall could have won if he could have kept Mighty Mouse on the ground, which he had an opportunity to in the beginning of either of those rounds. Just for some reason, he wasn't able to. A lot of people say, it was a big story the day before the fight, because both of these guys weighed in at the 125 limit for flyweight. I think both of them weighed in at 126 pounds. And Ian McCall, who's a popular poster on the Underground forum, we're also on there, the MMA Podcast is our username, check us out. Ian McCall posted saying he was now 150.5 pounds, meaning he put on almost 25 pounds. He put on 24.5 pounds after the weigh-in, which a lot of light heavyweights and middleweights do. A flyweight doing that is pretty insane.
What a great point, man, because you have to think, what is the advantage and the disadvantage of being heavier than your opponent? Okay, maybe you can muscle them around, maybe you'll have more power, but at the end of the day, the smaller guy is most likely going to have better cardio, you're going to gas sooner, and also you can't guarantee that you're going to muscle them around because they might be able to scramble, they're more agile. Great point. I think ultimately McCall needs to cut a little bit of muscle, maybe 5 or 10 pounds. He needs to get some of that water weight off, be a little more quick, and I think hopefully with the next fight we'll see that. One more point I want to bring up before we move on. It doesn't have anything to do with the Johnson-McCall fight, but in the Diaz-Condit fight, we were talking about who was the aggressor, who was the guy running away, who was doing more damage. That's a good point, but we also have to factor in who was winning the round. And I had Diaz winning 3 out of 5 rounds in that fight. I just wanted to bring that up before we moved on.
Definitely. It's a point a lot of people argue whether or not that way of striking is something that should win you rounds. And I think what point a lot of judges forget, judging in combat sports is really become even more of an issue recently with this Pacquiao-Bradley fight, which I'll touch on in my 10 solid seconds of sports. But part of what you're supposed to factor into judging is aggressiveness and octagon control. And I think judges, it's in the rules, and that should account for this sort of strategy. And for some reason or another, judges just don't listen to that part.
We need a revamp of the system. It's been an ongoing issue. You can go to any forum like the MMA Playground, our brothers over there. Basically, we need a revamp of the system. We need people who are not boxing judges, who have been actually educated in the way of MMA to be judging fights, because you're leaving guys' livelihoods in their hands. This is how they make money. This is how they support their families. And if, let's just say, they come across a guy that's super tough and just as good as they are, it might go to the judges' decisions, to their scorecards. and we need a better system, and that needs to be addressed.
It really does. Even more so in boxing now, people are alleging that these judging decisions are somehow corrupt with promoters. At least we don't have that problem in MMA, but it seems like a lot of those judges aren't as educated as they should, and not necessarily just for examples like Johnson McCall and Condit Diaz, but there's such a large amount of fights that have gone to decisions that nobody agrees with, and whether it's whether it's the Garcia fight comes to mind, just so many different fights where judges simply don't score the fight right because they're not educated enough in the sport. I mean, there's the story of the judge looking over at the other judge when a fighter's pulling for a Kimura and thinking, what is he doing? What is that? Like, really? I was aware of those moves maybe after I watched 3 or 4 MMA cards, and you're saying the professional people who are supposed to score these fights don't know what's going on? That's ludicrous.
Yeah, Joe Rogan brings up a great point that essentially what it is it's politics. The athletic commissions don't want to admit that they're wrong, and therefore the system doesn't change. It's really going to take a huge fuck-up, a situation where there is no possible way that they can't get out of it, and that's really sad.
It's going to need to happen in a title fight.
Yeah, they can't just set aside their egos and go, okay, we were wrong, and change it. You know, it doesn't matter. There's no retroactive. You don't have to go back and say, we were wrong for this, we were wrong for that. You step back, you look at it and go, okay, we need to change it, and then you make a new system and move on. It's not like anyone is saying you guys are wrong. It's the fact that it's a bad system for what it is now, and something needs to be done. And hopefully they can, step outside the box and get it done.
Definitely. You have anything else to say about this UFC on FX 3 card before we move on to the news?
Good job, guys. Good job, Dana. Good job, Lorenzo.
It was a good card all around. Pierce and Johnson rightfully won their decisions, and Wineland, Pyle, and Silva all pulled off some impressive finishes. I'm really excited to talk to Eddie Wineland about that fight, and I'm equally excited to talk to Charlie Brenneman about his future in the UFC, who maybe he thinks is suited as his next opponent, what he thinks about his own division's kind of mix up at the top with GSP's injury. We have a lot to get to with both of them. I actually just texted Eddie Wineland, and he says he's ready for us to call in about 20 minutes. That's 8:40 now. We'll call him about 9. So without any further comments on the card, let's get to the news. I actually just thought next episode we'll have a catchy news theme before we get into the MMA news.
Some kind of song or maybe some sound blurb. Yeah, sounds good.
I'll fake it now. Now the news.
Perfect.
All right. The first story I want to get into, there's a piece on it on the MMA Podcast.com. Bibiano Fernandez refuting claims that he signed with the UFC. This is really kind of perplexing to me. Not that he's refuting claims, but that he waited an entire week. I mean, it was last week when people came out and it was reported Bibio Fernandez, dream bantamweight champion, had signed with the UFC, which was great news. Everyone thinks he's one of the top bantamweights in the world. And there were rumors that he was going to fight as early as UFC 149 Calgary. And this all came out last week, and nobody was refuting it. Dana wasn't refuting it. Lorenzo wasn't refuting it. Bibiano Fernandez wasn't refuting it. His agent wasn't refuting it. No one was saying anything about it, so everyone just assumed, awesome, Bibiano's in the UFC. And then this week, Bibiano comes out and was like, I never signed with the UFC. I'm not fighting at UFC 149. After rumors had come out that he was injured and wouldn't fight on that card, it was it was a foregone conclusion he was with the UFC. People were already putting him into the UFC 149 card, saying he'd fight there, and somehow he never was signed with the UFC. No one ever refuted it. Dana said, oh yeah, he never signed. It's really kind of perplexing how over this, week span, nobody came out and said, yeah, Bibiano's not with the promotion.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, man. I mean, me personally, I don't think it should be any of our business. Like, that's a business decision. That's him and his manager, and that's the UFC. Somebody leaked the information. I would prefer that we don't have to deal with any of this, and we can just go on tomorrow on Bloody Elbow or the UG or MMA Playground or even the MMA Podcast.com and see Bibiano Fernandes signs with the UFC, makes his debut at this event. I prefer that. This whole back and forth crap with is he signed or is he not signed, I think that just goes to show you that maybe they should be a little more careful with who they share the information with, or it's just a giant troll job. I think he's an awesome fighter. He's going to make waves at middleweight. My bad, bantamweight. Jesus Christ.
That'd be awesome if he made waves at middleweight.
Oh, he'd be huge.
He overroids up 185.
How dare you, sir? No, I would like to see that instead of this, circus of is he signed or is he not signed. That's my take.
Definitely, there should really be a more standardized way of the UFC to come out and release news, because oftentimes it seems like people realize that fighters have been cut from the UFC, not because the UFC comes out with a press release, but simply because their names have been erased off the UFC website. People get cut from the UFC, and it isn't really realized until a week later. People are like, oh, Gerald Harris isn't on UFC.com anymore? What? And they release a lot of these guys and sign a lot of these guys without making any hubbub about it, which I feel there obviously needs to be more of a standardized way to get these guys actually out into the media, so people know that they're in fact in the UFC.
I agree with you 100%. Bibiano is a fantastic fighter. That's all right. Don't worry about it. He's a fantastic fighter. I mean, what a fighter. He trains with, he trains in Brazil. He also trains with BJ Penn a lot. I've seen that. He goes to, Camp Penn, trains out there. And I would love to see that guy at bantamweight. I would have loved to have seen him at featherweight. Let's say he didn't drop and he comes to featherweight. I think he would have been great there. He's not undersized for a featherweight. He just thought that he could do better at bantamweight by cutting some weight. So either way, I'd love to see the guy in the UFC. I think he's deserved it for a long time. I've been watching his fights since he was fighting in Dream in Japan. So, Bibiano, I hope you choose UFC over ONE FC.
Definitely.
Please.
He's come out and said that ONE FC is offering him more money than the UFC is for his first fight, but he needs to realize that the UFC is obviously going to be a better long-term money-making opportunity, whereas I don't think ONE FC over, maybe for one card they can give Bibiano more money than the UFC can, but over, say, 5 or 6 fights in a contract, the UFC is obviously going to give him more money, obviously going to give him more credibility if he is able to move up the charts and beat these guys and put himself into a title situation, which I think he really can. I think he's the second best bantamweight in the world. I think he's really Jose Aldo's best.
Wrong weight class, bud.
Bantamweight. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even mean Aldo. I meant Dominic Cruz. I think he's up there with the Fabers and the Barrows and the Cruzes. I was just thinking of dominant champions and said Aldo instead of Cruz.
He used to fight featherweight, so that's he fought featherweight for most of his career. I think he's had 2 fights at bantamweight. So.
Yeah, he was. He actually was Dream's first bantamweight champion and Dream's first featherweight champion. Definitely made history there. But speaking of those divisions outside of the UFC, there's not much competition in the bantamweight or featherweight ranks.
Absolutely. I think we've beat a dead horse with a hammer here. The guy is cream of the crop. He needs to come and fight for the UFC. If he signs with ONE FC, it's simply about short-term money, like you said. Maybe they're going to give him a fat check. But the fact is, who is he going to fight in ONE FC that's going to give him respect in the community? Nobody. He comes to the UFC. He has a fight. He doesn't make as much as he'd like to, but he's probably going to fight someone pretty high up in the rankings, and then after that get a title shot.
Yeah.
So I think that's a way better move.
Yeah, and he said it was going to be 2 months before he made up his mind for some reason. So I guess we'll wait and see whether he signs. Moving on to other UFC news, Dana White announcing that the next Ultimate Fighter season is going to be taped. They're going to scrap the idea of live shows, which I did enjoy the live show format, but I understand it's really hard to advertise those shows when you don't have any clips available because they haven't been put through post until like the day before the show actually airs. When one episode airs, there's nothing you can say to promote the next episode after it's over because it hasn't happened.
I don't even know how to feel about this, to be honest. I've been thinking about it since I heard about it. And honestly, I prefer the live format. I think it was refreshing. It was cool because you're watching it live. It's like watching a live UFC. This is really happening right now in front of you. And it seemed kind of cheap whenever it's pre-taped for all the other seasons because it had already happened, and I ultimately think this is a bad move. This is probably Fox stepping in and saying they don't like it, and Dana, his only option is to go back to the old format, and I don't like it at all, personally.
Oh, definitely. As a fan, I definitely prefer the live version. It was crazy how 1 week you would see Dominic Cruz completely healthy, and then the next week, news came out that, Dominic Cruz is injured. Literally 2 days later, you see, him come in, him address the injury. Dana White talk about the injury, talk about how Cruz won't be able to fight, how Faber will have another opponent. It was really kind of surreal how you got to see all of that play out the day after it happened, which as a fan, I totally prefer the live version. Live fights are so much more compelling than fights that have been recorded 6 weeks ago and maybe the results get leaked, but as devil's advocate, looking at it from a business standpoint, the UFC is going for the more casual MMA fan with the Ultimate Fighter, and being able to promote the show more with clips that have gone on throughout the season is probably going to help ratings out. And apparently Dana White said that if the UFC doesn't have satisfactory ratings this season, that they're going to move it back to a Tuesday or Wednesday, which I don't know why they didn't do in the first place. Fox is going to spend so much money on this UFC contract to be able to air fights and air the Ultimate Fighter, and they're going to slot the Ultimate Fighter in on a Friday night, the worst night that you can have ratings-wise. Come on.
Yeah, I agree. Friday night, people aren't going to be home, so bad call. But here's a question for you. I've been thinking about this a lot, what I thought about it. In previous seasons, whenever they're fighting, it's pre-taped, so you can't have a actual official record. Like, let's say you go out there and you fight on the Ultimate Fighter, you're having exhibition fights. It doesn't count towards your record. In the live fights, it does or doesn't count for your record. I'm not sure about that.
It does not. The live fights
does not.
The live fights were still exhibitions. Strangely enough, all of the Ultimate Fighter fights have been exhibition fights, except for the second season of the Ultimate Fighter. All of the fights that went on in that second season were actual commissioned bouts. And I'm not exactly sure the explanation behind that. I heard it somewhere and didn't really look into it, but kind of interesting tidbit, little fact about the Ultimate Fighter, how just weirdly that one season was the only season where all the fights were actual professional bouts.
I think if you're fighting live, on television, that should count towards your record. This last season, I think every fight you have where people are watching you live, that should go towards your record. I don't understand why they wouldn't do that. If it's pre-taped, I understand you don't want it to leak, because obviously if you have an official fight and it leaks, then they know who wins. But when it's live, that should go towards your record. You're having a mixed martial arts fight on live television where people are watching it. That should go towards your record, and that, I don't know, that really grinds my gears. It grinds my gears.
One of the issues, I'm not 100% sure if somebody knows that something additional to what I'm saying, definitely tweet us at the MMA Podcast. But I believe it has something to do with medical clearances, and if they're actual professional bouts, then you've got to wait a long amount of time between fights, whereas in the Ultimate Fighter you have eight weeks to do work. Moving on past the Ultimate Fighter, we got about 10 minutes before we're going to have Eddie Wineland on. Shogun Rua refusing to fight Glover Teixeira. Kind of perplexing, like the Bibiano story I said before. Shogun's known as a warrior. He just fought Dan Henderson, one of the cream of the crop guys, and he is refusing to fight Glover Teixeira. Glover Teixeira is refusing to fight Lyoto Machida. Just a continuation of this trend of fighters to refusing to fight other fighters.
I really don't blame him, to be honest. Like, Glover Teixeira he's been in the game for a while. He trains at the Pit with Chuck Liddell and John Hackelman. He also trains in Brazil. And I understand not wanting to, possibly your last fight. I mean, he doesn't have too many fights left in him. Shogun Rua has had 3 knee surgeries on both knees. That guy, he's a cyborg. That dude has a bunch of surgeries under his belt and a lot of layoff time, and he hasn't fought since November of 2011. So I don't blame him for not wanting to come in there against Glover, who's healthy and just had a fight, and he had a big fight under his belt. I think he needs big fights. I think he needs names, and I don't have a problem with him turning that down. Like, normally I'd say, well, you're a fighter, just accept what they give you. But in the case of Shogun, I kind of see where he's coming from.
Definitely. A lot of people say, oh, Shogun's scared. Well, I think Shogun's at the point of his career where he really can dictate not which guy every fight he is going to fight, but he can say, hey, I don't really want to fight this guy. He has put in his time. He's a real legend of the sport. He'll definitely be a UFC future Hall of Famer. Just with the work he had put in Pride, because as you look at the people who the UFC has inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame, they obviously do include those Pride credentials. But I'm really excited to see who Teixeira fights next, because that'll be a good one. Also going on, and people pulling out, people saying they don't want to fight people. Aldo isn't going to be at 149, and Faber Barao is now going to headline. Which actually I'm kind of glad. I want to see Coke fight one more person before he gets a title shot. I really didn't think Coke was that high up the featherweight scale to get a title shot against Jose Aldo.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, Aldo is pound for pound one of the best. They gave Coke the fight because Aldo didn't really have anyone coming up. Coke pulled out of the fight with Poirier from injury. Poirier signs up for a fight with Korean Zombie, and then Coke is like, oh, I'm not as injured as I thought I was, and he comes back and gets the fight with Aldo. I thought that was going to be a murder. Aldo's one of the best, and Coke seriously needs a couple more fights. Good call on that. And there's nobody really at the top of 145 who could really contend with Coke or Aldo. You have Korean Zombie, who's now going to fight. He's waiting. And then beyond that, who do you have? You have Seaver, Nunez, a bunch of guys who have maybe 1 or 2 victories under their belt. There's not really a clear-cut contender. So I agree with you. I think Coke needs a number one contender fight with someone, and I'd like to see Korean Zombie go up against Alto.
Definitely. Actually, I think this might be a good opportunity. We're having Wineland on in about 5 minutes, but let's fit in 10 solid seconds of sports. There was a lot of hockey, a lot of basketball, a little bit of boxing to talk about. So we don't want to waste too much time talking about other sports because this is an MMA podcast. So without further ado. The LA Kings defeat the New Jersey Devils in 6 games to win the team's first Stanley Cup in 44 years. Kevin Durant and the Thunder take Game 1 of the NBA Finals at home against star-studded Heat. Bob Arum kills boxing by orchestrating a bullshit decision that Bradley Patrick.
Boom!
Oh, God. Okay. All right, gotta clean up after that.
That was so intense.
Moving on to other MMA news, we'll just hit one more topic before we call up Eddie. All of these injuries going on. We were just talking about Jose Aldo pulling out a 149, which thankfully Faber Barao is now headlining. That's going to be a dope card with Faber Barao, Big Nog versus Chick Congo, Bisping versus Boach. GSP coming back from that injury, and the UFC has tentatively scheduled GSP versus Carlos Condit in November for UFC 154. You think he's going to be ready by then?
I have no idea, man. I'd like for him to be back for that fight and get this logjam at welterweight figured out, but I mean, he knows his body. He knows what he needs to do. If he has to wait a little longer and we have to wait 1 or 2 months, as bullshit as that is, let's just wait. We got to wait for the guy. You don't want him to come back on a bum knee and then injure it or, get injured before the fight. So, we'll see what happens. Let the chips let the chips come up as they fall.
Come up as they fall as they may. Yeah, we'll see if GSP's ready by then. There isn't a really clear-cut next number one contender. A lot of people are saying Hendricks. A lot of people are saying Campman. It's rumored the two might fight if GSP is able to get back by then. But I think the real question in everyone's mind is, will GSP be back to 100% by then? Is he going to be the same fighter that he has been for the last few years?
Couldn't agree with you more, man. He's one of my favorite fighters, and I really hope that he takes the time to rehab it and do it right and come back. Because if you an ACL injury is serious business, and I really hope that he takes it seriously, which I know he will. He's the welterweight champion, the true champion, and we'll see what happens. That's my take.
Definitely, major ACL surgery is always sketchy, so I'm really hoping that GSP comes back 100%, because he's arguably one of the greatest fighters in MMA history. He's easily the greatest welterweight in UFC history, and just as a fan of the sport, I have my fingers crossed that he comes back 100% and is able to perform at the level that he has been the last few years. So without any further ado, I guess, let's get Eddie Wineland on the phone. Let me call him up. You want to entertain the guest with a little song while...
Oh, I would love to. Let me clear... No, actually, I just have a question to ask. Fedor, is he done officially? He's fighting Hizzo here next week. I can't wait to see if this is his final fight. I think he has a couple more fights left in him. Fedor has had a real problem with the UFC in coming to agreement with money, and I think we can all agree that the only issue in the way of making this happen is M1 Global. M1 Global is directly responsible for putting Elite XC out of business, Affliction out of business, and possibly they were almost putting Strikeforce out of business. Luckily, the UFC stepped in and bought Strikeforce. I think Elite XC is a tumor on the world of the UFC. I think we could have seen Fedor back in 2010, 2009. We could have seen him in the UFC, and I think he could have been the UFC heavyweight champion. And this next week he fights Pedro Hizzo, who is completely washed up. I know he's an actual fighter, but, I mean, come on, let's get real here. We need to see Fedor versus some real talent. He's fought Jeff Monson. He's fought, God, who is that guy? The Olympic silver medalist. Can't even think of his name. That's how ridiculous that is.
Yeah, Fedor Hizzo is really the only fight of note this weekend, and that's the question on everybody's mind: is he going to continue his career and bowl through Hizzo, or if he loses, are we looking at the end of one of the greatest careers in the sport of all time? So I'm calling up Eddie Wineland right now. We're dialing him. Dialing him up. We are dialing up. He is on hold. There we go. You with us, Eddie? Oh, wait. It's...
Hello?
Hey, what's up, man?
What's happening?
How's it going, man? How's that cut feeling?
Oh, it's awesome, man. I actually took my stitches out this morning.
Oh, really? Nice. I'm kind of surprised it healed that fast.
Yeah. It's he said 5 to 7 days. Absolutely no longer than 7. But all I heard was 5 days.
Nice. I was talking about it earlier. That was the one moment during UFC on FX3 where I leaped out of my seat, blood everywhere, and you just connect on that 1-2 and knock him out. What is it like standing there in the pocket? I mean, I'm sure you were getting really woozy from losing so much blood out of your head. What was that experience like going for the kill as you were just drenched in blood?
I really didn't get that lightheaded or woozy or dizzy anything. The only thing I had on my brain was, I'm going to kill this guy. It's you see blood, and unfortunately it was my blood. But anytime you see blood, it's go time.
Eddie, you are a fantastic bantamweight, man. And every time I see you step into the cage, I can't help but feel some chills because you're so scary looking. You're biting down on your mouthpiece. You're just, you're biting down. What makes you so intense in the cage, dude? What gives you that edge?
That's just my personality, man. I mean, I guess I have two different personalities. Outside of the cage, I'm the biggest softy. I mean, I got the biggest heart outside of the cage, but you get me inside that cage, and you're in for a long night. I don't care who you are. Whether I win or lose, I'm still going to beat you up, and that's just my intensity. That's me. Even when I'm in the gym, I don't try to hurt the people, but it's intense. I've trained with people that after 12 rounds, I'm still just in their face, and the guy goes, man, I've never trained with somebody with that kind of intensity. I said, well, I'm training to take somebody's head off. We're not playing slap and tickle. I'm here to grind your face in that cage, and that's you're gonna fight how you train. I train hard, so I fight hard.
Yeah, you are easily one of the top guys, and not just your division, but the entire UFC who pushes the action and is really aggressive going after it, almost like Vanderlei in his prime. The first guy to stop Scott Jorgensen with strikes. Renan Barão couldn't even do that. People are talking about him being one of the top strikers in the division, but you were able to stop him with strikes. You trying to get a fight soon, or with the injury, do you want to take a little bit of a break before your next fight?
Ultimately, it's my forehead's going to decide that. Whenever I and the doctors feel that it's ready to take some shots again, of course I want to get in there ASAP, but at the same time I'm also enjoying eating some pizza and cheeseburgers and a couple of beers here and there, I'm a fighter, and as soon as I can get back in there, I will. I started lifting weights again today, and obviously I can't wrestle or box I'm on a 2-month suspension, so I just got to do what I can to bide my time until I can get back into the gym.
Eddie, I've been watching you since I want to say probably 2009. I've been watching your fights in the WEC, and I want to say it's an honor to talk to you, and this is incredible.
Oh,
and,
I appreciate it, man.
Dude, you're fantastic, man. I've been watching you forever, and you're just one of those guys that comes in and you take a takedown and you shrug it off and you punch fuckers in the face. And I gotta say, I came up with a nickname for your style. How do you like slip and rip?
Slip and rip. I could take that.
Awesome,
Absolutely.
man. I think you're one of the hardest punchers at bantamweight, and I actually thought of a fight that would be good for you. I was looking at who's on a winning streak, who's doing good. You just knocked out Scott Jorgensen, who fought for the title not too long ago. How would you feel about a fight with Yves Jabouin? Because that guy's coming off of 3 decision wins, and he brings it every time he stands and bangs. How would you like to fight that guy?
You know, I'll fight anybody. Whoever they want to put in front of me. You know, it's anymore. It's just pay me. You know, it's not about fighting for the title. You know, given that you string together 3 or 4 wins, you're inevitably going to fight for the title. But I just want to get paid, man. I got a house to pay off. Fortunately with this bonus check, I'm going to be able to pay my car off, and you know, by the time I'm done fighting, I want to have all my bills paid and be able to live off my fire department money and just be a happy man, you know.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. What is that like, balancing the life of training as a professional MMA fighter and easily one of the top 10 bantamweights in the world, and also working as a firefighter in Indiana?
It's very easy, actually. I mean, I work 100 to 110 days a year. I just made my schedule up. I think I worked 6 days this month. So, you know, by the time June is up, I'll have worked, I think it's like 6 or 7 days. So, you know, the other days that I'm not working, I'm doing stuff. You know, I'm doing stuff to better myself. I'm doing stuff to learn. You know, I'm always getting better, and you know, it's just a matter of time. And I think keeping my mentality where it's at, you guys, you know, everybody's going to see the old Eddie Wineland throughout the rest of my career.
Fighting fighters, fighting elite bantamweights. I'm kind of surprised they're making you go out and fight fires with that big gash on your face. You should be getting workman's comp or something, man.
Yeah. I'm fortunate enough that I work in a small town, so we run a lot of medical calls. It's funny, is I run a medical call, and the patient who I'm working on, she's looking at me going, "Oh my God, what's wrong with you?" You know, so I'm sitting here trying to fix this lady who's done called 911, and she's asking me what my problem is.
Do you have one of those old school firehouses, the 2-story fire pole you slide down when the alarm goes off?
No, we do have one station that's got a pole, but it's a brand new station, so it's not old school. We do have 2 other stations they're only a single level though.
Eddie, you train out of Indiana. Are you on Team Curran? I forgot to look up what team you train out of. Are you training with Jeff Curran and Pat Curran, or who are you training with?
I'm with New Breed, Chicago. It's on the north side in Niles, Illinois. It's with Mark Vives, and then I also train at Dunlin Valley Tudo with the likes of Darren Elkins and Keith Wisniewski.
And that guy had a fucking awesome win the last week against Diego Brandao. What a Absolutely. Sweet win that guy had, huh?
Absolutely. He's he's a grinder. You know, he's like I am. You know, anybody that trains at Dunlin Valley too. I mean, they're all hard-nosed wrestlers. They're all grinders, and it's hard to put them away. You know, you feel like you got them, and they just keep grinding. You know, and that's Darren's thing is you can wrestle with him, and he's breathing so heavy you think that he's tired, but he's still going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it's like, what do I got to do to get this guy to slow down? And there's nothing you can do.
You know what? After watching your last fight, I've seen you knock out Ken Stone with a takedown. That was fantastic. You ripped a body shot against Will Campazano that crumpled him over, and you just walked away like a boss. And then you knocked out Scott Jorgensen at the last UFC. What is your most gratifying win in mixed martial arts? Like the win that makes you think, man, I really put it on the guy and I won.
You know, all of those really. I mean, even my Roop fight, my George Roop fight, I didn't knock him out, but his claim was I've never been dropped. You know, and that's everybody's claim that I fight. Well, you've also never been hit by me. You know, I dropped him I think 4 times in that fight, maybe more. He's 6'2", you know. Here I am 5'7". This guy's 6'2", making 135 pounds, and I'm dropping him on his ass. You know, every fight that's a win is gratifying. You know, even the Uriah Faber fight, you know, that fight was gratifying for me to know that had I have kept my head on straight and fought the second and third round like I did the first, that was my fight. You know, that's my fight to win. You know,
you were awesome in that fight.
Yeah, and that's you know, even coming off of a loss, it's still a gratifying loss because he's regarded as the number 2 bantamweight in the world, and he could not hurt me. Yeah,
you actually in that fight you had a real good defensive wrestling, you know, technique, and you have a Greco-Roman background. Can you kind of elaborate on that? I never knew that you had a wrestling background.
Yeah, I've wrestled since I was 6, you know, and then knowing or seeing that you don't know that I have a wrestling background, that's I mean, everybody's that way. You know, even everybody that I fight, they think that wrestling is my weakness. Wrestling is my base. You know, wrestling is where I came from. That's where I started. I started wrestling. I've just so happened to develop my hands and to develop my mental game that I'm confident enough in my hands that I just use my wrestling to keep it on the feet.
Yeah, definitely. I was kind of curious about that. I was going to ask, you know, you started fighting professionally at 19. What exactly parlayed into you getting into mixed martial arts and getting your career off the ground?
Graduating high school, you know, all I was doing was really lifting weights, and you know, I was actually, I think I was 18 when I started. I was getting ready to turn 19. And a buddy of mine had been fighting since our sophomore year, you know, since he was 16 years old, and I always thought he was nuts. You know, this guy's 16 years old, he's fighting 35-year-old men, and, you know, I just thought he was a lunatic. I got out of high school, and like every 18-year-old kid, I thought I was the baddest son of a bitch on the planet, so, you know, and I'm really glad I didn't have such a hot head, you know, but I did have a temper, and I'm glad that I didn't get into any kind of altercations on the street, because if I would have met somebody that knows what I know now, I mean, there's a good chance I'd be dead. You know, you don't know what people know out there. And he approached me and he said, hey, you know, you've got a wrestling base. You're strong. You know, you like to lift weights. You're a competitive person. Why don't you come try this out? So, you know, I went and trained with these guys, Keith and Justin. That's when I met the Polish connection, they call them, Keith and Justin Wisniewski. And they asked me how I feel about fighting, and 2 months went by. I was training, and 2 months went by, and I had my first fight. You know, here I'm an 18-year-old kid, and I'm fighting a 37-year-old balding man.
Wow. Yeah, how long have you been with New Breed in Chicago? That's definitely one of the up-and-coming camps in the UFC that a lot of people are starting to come out of.
Yeah, I started with New Breed about 3 years ago. They were, I think it was maybe my Tapia fight or just after my Tapia fight. It might have been right after my Tapia fight. But it's been about 3 years now, and you know, that I think that is what has helped my mental game. It's helped my patience. You know, I used to get real anxious and really antsy. If I'd get caught in a submission, I would panic and scramble. And you know, working with some of the black belts up there, Mark. You know, he's really taken my mental game and my patience and taken it to a whole new level.
That's amazing, man. I'm glad to hear that, dude. I'm really glad that you've taken it to the next level. And I remember back in I want to say March 2011, I was watching the UFC 128 pre-countdown show, right?
Yeah.
And I was making sandwiches. I'm sitting there making sandwiches, and I look up at the TV, and I saw your brother. Incredible story. He sustained some fire, you know, burns, and I just want to ask you, is that guy there cage side for every one of your fights? Does he actually come there and support you?
No, he obviously supports me, but he's not cage side. He when they're on TV, he watches them on TV. He did come to my Benavidez fight. He was there, and you know, any local fight that he can make it to, he comes to. But you know, I see him as he's been through 16 years of hell. I mean, literally hell and back. And I mean, if he can go through 16 years of that, why can't I go through 15 minutes of it? You know, and it just, if I feel like I can't endure 15 minutes of pain, I feel like a giant sissy.
That's fucking amazing, man. I remember not knowing anything about you. Like, before this fight, I'd seen you fight in the WEC probably 3 or 4 times. And then I saw this, and, like, it really brought it all together. It was a human side to you. I finally saw something personal, and I just got to say, man, mad respect to you and your brother, and I only wish the best for you guys.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. Eddie, I don't have any more questions. You have any shout-outs or anything? Definitely follow Eddie at Twitter at Eddie Wineland, EDDIEWINELAND.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody that's helped me get ready for this fight, and just everybody in my life in general. You know, I've surrounded myself with a good group of people, and I mean, I'm a huge believer in you surround yourself with good people and good things happen, and it's definitely a testament that good things are happening. Even in my losses, good things are happening. So, you know, everybody at New Breed and at Doomland Valley Judo, my strength and conditioning coach Jason Gusick, he's just been a saving grace for me. And
yeah, I've seen you actually. I was lurking your Twitter and I saw a 455-pound squat, Eddie.
Absolutely. Well, it's a half squat. We do without giving away too many secrets. We do this a half squat routine where you only do a half squat, but you do it 5 times as fast as you can. So over the course of the 8-week training camp, my half squat had progressed to 455 pounds for 5 reps in under 6 seconds.
And people wonder why you hit so hard.
Absolutely, you know, and that's like I said, he is literally taking my power, and it's gone through the roof without gaining any pounds. I haven't gained a single pound, but I mean, I've put 200 pounds on my deadlift in 3 years.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, Eddie, it has been an absolute honor to have you on the MMA podcast. It's our 2nd episode, and to be completely honest, I'm kind of awestruck just to be sitting here and chatting it up with you, man.
Anytime, man. Anytime. I'm always open.
All right. Thanks a lot, Eddie.
Thanks,
Eddie. Thank you, guys.
Talk to you later.
All right, see ya.
And that was elite 135-pounder Eddie Wineland. How awesome was that? I think we lost Chris. He has passed out. So it looks like I'm going to be trucking ahead on my own because Chris has died. Yeah, that was an awesome interview.
What a great human being. I mean, just the fact that, you know, he has a brother who took some, you know, fire damage, and he's there to support him. His brother's there for him. I mean, and he hits harder than anyone.
Hits like a truck.
God, what a great guy.
I mean, so far we are 3 for 3 on awesome interviews. I'm pumped up. We had Albert and Crookshank last week, who were 2 amazing guys. You know, it really makes you almost sit back and think like, man, these are some of the, you know, more intelligent, personable people I have had an opportunity to just sit down and chat with, you know, yet their profession is to go in a cage and beat people up. And in about 15 minutes, we're going to have our 4th fighter on for the MMA podcast. We're going to have Charlie Brenneman, UFC welterweight, who also fought on the card last Friday. We got a little bit of time in between then. How do you say we talk about, you know, we've talked about all these stories in the welterweight division, featherweight, bantamweight, flyweight. Let's talk about some heavyweight action. Junior Dos Santos has looked like one of the more dominant heavyweight champions of the last few years.
Yeah, he's been absolutely incredible. I remember watching his first fight against Verdum live on pay-per-view. He starched Verdum. He comes in, he starches Stefan Struve in the same amount of time. Then he fights Crow Cop, makes Crow Cop quit. He blasts out Gilbert Ivel, who's a Pride veteran and an excellent kickboxer, starches him in 1 round, and actually hits Ivel so hard that he spins around 180 degrees and lands, then knocks out Gabriel Gonzaga in 1 round, fights Big Country and, you know, beats the crap out of him, fights, who did he fight? He fought Shane Carwin, made Shane Carwin look like a circus clown, and then he goes in there and knocks out Cain Velasquez in 1 round, who can stop this man? Then he fights Mir and finishes Mir in the second round. I say the only man on the planet that has a chance at beating this guy is Alistair Overeem.
Definitely, and it's kind of a shame we got to wait 9 months to see Overeem take on Dos Santos. But in the meantime, it looks like we're going to have Dos Santos Velasquez 2 to look forward to. I don't know if that's officially been scheduled for any cards, but it's definitely going to be a better fight than the first one went. I think Dos Santos finishes that fight in the short amount of time he did. Maybe 1 out of 10 times he fights Cain Velasquez. I still think Dos Santos will win the rematch, but I don't think you drop Velasquez in such a devastating fashion as easily as you did the first time.
Absolutely. Let's look at factors. Cain was coming off of a win against Brock Lesnar in November of 2010, and then fights Dos Santos in November of 2011. So that's a year-long layoff. You got to put that into a factor. And then Velasquez comes in, and he's leg-kicking Dos Santos. Every single offensive strike that Velasquez threw down at Dos Santos was a leg kick. He would start every combo with a leg kick, end it with a leg kick. That's not a good move. He used zero wrestling. And then you look at Velasquez's fight with Bigfoot, and he used all wrestling and savagely beat Bigfoot, who's no joke. So I think you're absolutely right. I think Velasquez, with the right game plan, not only can win the title, probably not, but he at least will make it longer than 1 round.
Definitely. Cain's one of those guys who's known in the heavyweight division to have one of the biggest gas tanks. So it'll really be interesting if Cain can push it to the 3rd round, the 4th round, potentially the 5th round, and see if Dos Santos can hang in there with him, because we haven't really seen somebody push Dos Santos in a later round. And if anybody, I think, is going to do it other than Alistair Overeem, it's Cain Velasquez.
Yep, absolutely, man. I don't have much to add because that's a great point.
He called out, or I guess saying called out is the wrong term, but he said John Bones Jones would be a dangerous fighter at the heavyweight division. How long do you think it is before we see him move up and fight these big heavyweights? Do you think it'll ever happen?
I'm not sure, man. I mean, there's no way of telling. It's such a volatile sport. That's a good question. I'm not sure.
People always argue that, the middleweight champion should move up to light heavyweight, the bantamweight champion should move up to featherweight, et cetera, et cetera. But it's kind of a hard argument to say the light heavyweight champion should move up to heavyweight, because in every other division, there's 10, 15 pounds, maybe 20 between middleweight and light heavyweight. But there's a 60-pound differential between light heavyweight and heavyweight. That is a giant gap. I mean, if you see John Jones fight a guy like Junior Dos Santos, yeah, they're roughly the same size maybe, but you see Bones take on a guy like Overeem. Overeem's going to tower over him and have a tremendous size advantage. Definitely.
The heavyweight division is such a huge gap. It's 206 pounds to 265 pounds. I mean, Randy Couture, every time he fought at heavyweight, the heaviest he got was 227 pounds against Gabriel Gonzaga when he successfully defended his title against Gonzaga, who at the time weighed 250 pounds. So Gonzaga had, almost 25 pounds on him. Couture still won. I think speed most of the time beats weight. So I think making a separate division is kind of heading into the territory of boxing. You make too many divisions, it's watered down. I honestly don't see a problem with Alistair Overeem versus John Jones at 230. I would love to see that fight. So I used to think that they should make a separate division, but after looking at what Cain Velasquez has done and other light heavyweights like Stipe Miocic, I have no problem with that.
Definitely. The UFC's already expanded from 5 to 8 weight divisions in the last couple years, and I'm happy at 8. I don't want to see it expand past 8, except for women's divisions. I'd obviously like to see a couple women's divisions in the UFC over time. Dana White actually came out and said that Ronda Rousey was a great prospect and was really looking forward to her next fight, and obviously hinted at the fact that he wanted her to be in the UFC at some time, saying she's as tough and nasty as they come. So definitely looking forward to that. But before we move on past Bones and the heavyweight division, last episode we didn't really touch on it, but we want to talk about Jon Jones' future. He has a fight with Dan Henderson pretty soon. He just got that DUI a couple months ago. What do you think about his DUI starting to affect his future fights with people like Dan Henderson?
I honestly think that everyone's human, and so what if the clean-cut Jon Jones gets a DUI? Yeah, that sucks, but it's going to make him a better person. He's going to realize that he's not outside of the law, and he's not outside of, being, he's a champion, a young champion, so he has one slip-up, so what? I really don't care about it. I think hopefully he can learn from it and move on, and I'm sure he will. He's not a dumb guy. He's not addicted to drugs or, he doesn't have any weird problems. So I say, you know what, John, just learn from this mistake, move on. And I think he'll do that. I don't think it affects his fight with Dan Henderson. Dan Henderson is a dynamo at 41 years old in the light heavyweight division. It's incredible. The guy brings it every time. He's a Greco-Roman Olympic-level wrestler with one-punch knockout power. And that being said, I think Jon Jones finishes Dan Henderson, probably by submission.
Yeah, I also think Bones finishes Henderson simply because his skill level is so through the roof. But there is that chance that it gets to him. But the main thing I wanted to talk about it with his DUI. I don't think a lot of people would have made such a big issue about it if Jones wasn't talking from his high horse so much. I'm sorry, but when he was talking about like Rashad Evans during the pre-fight, he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna pray for Rashad after the fight. I'm praying for him." He talks from this high horse. It's really kind of perplexing how literally, I want to say a month or two before he got the DUI, he came out after his official UFC sponsorship was made public and said, "I'm not one of these knuckleheads who's going to go out and DUI." Lo and behold, a month later he goes out and gets a DUI. Just I really hope that this doesn't affect him, because he does seem like a really mentally strong guy, but we've seen guys that one problem turns into another problem and almost starts to snowball.
Yeah, I agree. I love Jon Jones as a fighter. Seeing that guy fight is incredible. He's only been training for 4 years, and look at what he's done. He's defeated 4 previous champions in a row. That's incredible, and he's made it look easy. But as a person, he is pretty annoying. He gets on my nerves for sure. He goes in there and kind of judges people, and I do this and I do that, and he makes it look like he's some kind of pariah. But I really don't look into that. All that I really focus on is when they step into the cage. You look at Chael Sonnen, he says a lot of crazy shit, but guess what? He gets in there and he backs it up. Definitely. And, speaking about the heavyweight division, all this stuff surrounding Brock Lesnar, is he going to be in the UFC soon? Is he, with the WWE? I think it's kind of funny because Brock Lesnar has one of the most overinflated egos, which I hate to say, negative things about fighters back to back. Obviously, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Jon Jones and Brock Lesnar, but it's just a judgment call to say that Jon Jones speaks off of a high horse. I think a lot of people would agree, and I think it's kind of arguable to it's kind of not arguable to say that Brock has a really big ego, which does help him. It definitely helped him train and helped him become one of those scariest guys at 265, because he wanted to be the best, and he actually had the means to bulk up and be one of the best. But when he lost, he took it so hard
that he decided to retire, because he has such an alpha male mentality that when somebody beat him so devastatingly, he felt like after that loss he couldn't beat Alistair Overeem, and because he couldn't do that, he was not going to win the title, and because he couldn't do that, it was kind of pointless. But now he's going back with Dana, showing up to fights. Apparently Dana and Vince McMahon over with the WWE are mad at him, which it kind of suits. You know, he trying to play the UFC and the WWE. It's kind of become apparent that him retiring, quote unquote, from the UFC was just kind of a power play, and him going to the WWE was just as much of a power play, and he was kind of leveraging both companies off each other to build up his value, when in reality his value might not be as high as he's claiming it is.
Well, as far as the business side of it, you just broke it down in a way that I could never do, because I'm a community college student. So, fantastic breakdown of the business side. I can't comment on that because I really don't know. But when it comes to Brock Lesnar as a fighter, yeah, he had his moments. But let's be honest, I've been saying this for years. He was the world's strongest hammer and the weakest nail.
Well put, my friend. Well put. We get very existential here on the MMA podcast.
Well, let's be honest. He came in there, he got, knee barred by Frank Mir, and then he decisioned Heath Herring, who hasn't fought since that fight. Then he fights an old man, Randy Couture, and he grabbed the fence in the first round. Like, Randy had a double leg, scooped it up, and, Brock Lesnar grabbed the fence and then TKO'd Randy Couture, and then he TKO'd Frank Mir, didn't knock him out cold. And then after that, he basically, he choked out a really tired Shane Carwin and then lost 2 fights back-to-back in devastating fashion. I don't think he's had a great career. I don't think he's a good, mixed martial artist. I think he did well for his skill set against the opponents that were picked for him, and I'll stand by that till the day I die.
He had an interesting career, maybe not a legendary MMA career, but without further ado, let's call up Charlie Brenneman, get him on the line, and talk with him about his fights recently at UFC on FX, his career. We're calling him up, rambling on.
Charlie,
multitasking. All right.
Yeah, guys, how about that crazy weather?
I think we got him on the line. You are there, Charlie? Well, maybe it didn't go through. I'm going to try and call him again. It said call completed, but didn't seem to actually be completed. Oh, yeah, it said the call dropped. Yeah, but definitely going on to the Charlie Brenneman interview. I definitely want to ask him about that UFC Live Congo Berry card that was so jumbled up. I want to hear what it was like in those few days, him going from the undercard to being the co-main event in his own hometown. Dropped 2 times. I'm going to text him and have him call in to the show if you want to rant about whatever it is you like to rant about, Chris.
I would love to rant. How about those $1 hot dogs in my theater? It's $1. People complain about it. It's incredible.
That is pretty incredible. $1 hot dogs, and people say it's too expensive, or do they complain about
too hot,
the poor quality?
It's too hard, it's too cold.
Heard that before. What?
I bet you have.
All right, I sent Charlie a text to see if he would call us.
Okay, so the biggest
radio silence. It's
biggest rematch of the century: Chael Sonnen versus Anderson Silva, coming up here on June 7th. It's going to be incredible. There's a lot of speculation who will win that, and the only thing I can say is Anderson Silva is the greatest fighter to have ever fought in mixed martial arts. Chael Sonnen is the greatest trash talker to have ever fought, and is the only guy to beat the piss out of Anderson Silva. I can't wait to see it.
I still say the two craziest things I've ever seen in an MMA fight. The second craziest thing I've ever seen was Chael Sonnen beating Anderson Silva up, putting him on his ass. The craziest thing I've ever seen in a fight is Anderson tying him up and choking him out with 2 minutes to go before he would have ultimately easily lost the decision, probably 50-45 even, which is the greatest fighter in the world losing a decision 50-45. That's insane.
Yep, and I love seeing Chael bring up every loss of his career, except for the Damian Maia loss.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
That one.
It didn't happen, Chris.
He got judo tossed off the cage and triangled in a minute and 40 seconds, something like that.
Let's try and call him one more time.
Uh-huh.
Oh, there we go. We got a dial tone at least this time.
We have a ringtone. Incredible.
Ring.
Good pause.
Hey, Charlie, we finally got you. Sorry about that.
No problem at all.
Thank you so much for coming on the MMA podcast. That it's a real honor for you to come on. It's only our second episode, and your time really means a lot to us, man.
Well, no problem at all. Let's make the most of it, guys.
Let's
make it a good one.
Yeah.
I was actually in the queue area for a while, so I was listening to you for about a minute and a half. I was trying to chime in, but nobody was hearing me.
Yeah, it didn't put you in the studio for some reason. I don't know. I called up Eddie Wineland about a half an hour ago, and it worked flawlessly. This is a really kind of weird piece of software. I'm going to have to...
What the hell, Charlie? What the hell?
Come on, Charlie.
Come on, guys. What kind of ship are you guys sailing? Come on.
A broken ship, sir. A broken ship.
Yeah. Sorry.
I wanted to ask you about the UFC Live Congo Berry fight. That's kind of the card where you let everyone know that you were on the scene at the welterweight division. A lot of people really hadn't heard about you until that fight, and almost everyone heard about you afterwards. What was it like going from, first it was going to be Anthony Johnson versus Marquardt, then it was going to be Story versus Marquardt, then it was Story versus you. That must have been so hectic leading up to that.
Yeah, it was a crazy week. Everything, all the things that you just mentioned, and then some. It was just a crazy, hectic time, and thankfully it all worked out for the best, and I was able to kind of put myself on the map.
Yeah, man. Charlie, I've been watching your fights since the beginning, dude, and your nickname is the Spaniard. I get it. You're a handsome guy. You got the nice, flowing locks of hair. You look like the Spaniard. But whenever you step into the octagon, you're the bull. You take the bull by the horns and you just get in there and you grab onto him and you toss him down. So where did this nickname come from?
Actually came from, you were kind of very close there with the hair and the appearance. My wrestling coach kind of gave me the nickname. We would go around doing all these camps, and he'd give us all nicknames. And, the Spaniard was what he started calling me. I was a Spanish major in college, so that's what kind of tipped him off and gave him the idea of it. But I basically just kept it from that. And, when I started fighting, I thought, man, I'll go by the Spaniard.
Yeah, definitely. You got a kind of interesting career before you fought. You were a school teacher before you were a fighter?
Yeah, I taught junior high and high school for 3 years, and it was good to me. I don't really have any, I didn't hate it or anything. I just, had this other passion that I wanted to give a try.
So were you fighting and teaching at the same time during any point, or did you stop teaching?
It did overlap a little bit. I had, I believe it was just a couple amateur fights. Actually, I guess all my amateur fights. So, yeah, I had about 4 or 5 amateur fights. But then at the end of that school year is when I stopped and I went professional.
Did you ever come in with a black eye or a gash on your lip and people would ask you about it?
No, I was pretty fortunate those first couple fights. I didn't get banged up at all.
Yeah, so was it something was it something you kind of kept on the down low and didn't talk to many teachers about?
Not so much that either, because I from the very beginning I was real big on media, so I upload everything to YouTube. So my kids, I would fight on Saturday, and my kids would watch the video, and we'd be talking about it on Monday morning.
Charlie, let's be honest here, man. Middle school versus high school, who were the biggest dickheads? Because I would have to imagine middle school kids were like really, really abrasive, if I had to guess.
Well, you've obviously never taught, because if you did, you'd know that no kid is a dickhead. They're all good kids. They just make bad decisions.
I feel like a dick now, Charlie. My bad.
No, you know what? It's weird, man. They're different animals. Probably the worst is the tweeners, like the 9th, 10th grade, because then 11th grade they start to. So 6th, 7th grade they have a little bit of fear. 8th, 9th grade they start to get some balls. Late 9th, 10th, and some of 11th they're kind of like the cool cats. But then like not a majority, at least half of them, towards the end of 11th into 12th grade, they kind of have an idea that, this is kind of real life and I better get my act together.
Yeah, definitely. So, you have a bunch of things that were kind of noteworthy you did other than your MMA career. You also were on Pros vs. Joes and won the first season of that. Was that still when you were a school teacher and doing amateur fights, or when did that go on?
Pros vs. Joes was actually when I was teaching full time. It happened in 2005. I taught all the way up to 2007. Hello? You there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was 2005, 2006 school year. So that was a whole year and a half before I left my job. But yeah, that was just kind of a random thing that, I saw the application online, thought I'd give it a shot, ended up giving it a shot, and took home the prize.
Nice. Do you mind if I ask where you're driving to?
Hey, how could you tell I was driving?
We heard the ding, ding, ding. Come on, man. You can't fool us.
I am at home in PA, and I am on my way to get some delicious hot wings, because this is the week of crappy eating. So I'm going to go get some hot wings.
That's really kind of incredible, because last week we had Darren Cruikshank on, who in the middle of the interview, a car alarm thing went off, and we were like, what was that? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm headed off to Buffalo Wild Wings. We'll go and grab some wings.
They're my, no, they're more than my weakness. I pretty much eat them all the time, so they're one of my favorite foods.
Dude, Charlie, I love that, man. I eat hot wings like a beast.
I'm pretty sure I could outdo you, but...
Oh. I'm sure you could, because you're an actual cage fighter.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you go extra spicy, or do you tone it down and go with, like, a more mild wing?
Well, tonight we're getting zesty Italian. I normally go with the pretty hot. I don't like, the hottest hot, but I like a very hot. But tonight, this place, they're known for their zesty Italian, so getting some of them.
Oh, nice. You want to say the restaurant you're going to and give them some shameless advertising, or?
I will. TK's Subs and Six Packs in Hollidaysburg, PA. Always have some good wings.
Boom! Look at that. So, Charlie, I got a question for you, man. You fought Rick Story. Jake brought that up earlier. You went in short notice against Rick Story, and I'm sure you've heard plenty of questions regarding this, but how intense is it to fight Rick Story? Because that guy, every time you see him, he's mean mugging you, and he doesn't like to touch gloves. How awesome was it to get in there and take his ass down and beat him up?
It was pretty awesome. Up until that point, and I guess still to this point, professionally I respect him. I respect what he does. He comes to fight every time. So there wasn't really much personal, vengeance maybe. But, yeah, you're right. He does do a good bit of mean mugging. His coach does a good bit of mean mugging. But that's, those are kind of childish games. I just want to get in there in front of everyone on TV and put an ass whooping on them.
Definitely. You're one of the more impressive welterweights in the division. Your only losses have come to Hendricks, who's maybe a fight away from the title, Anthony Johnson, who's a natural super heavyweight, and Eric Silva, who a lot of people are saying is, one of the hottest up-and-coming people in the welterweight division. Is there anyone in particular you want for your next fight, or are you just one of those guys who like saying that they'll fight whoever you put out in front of them?
Up to this point, we've kind of just taken, whoever they put in front of us, we take. But I actually was just talking to my brother, and he threw a name out there, one that I'm not going to throw out there yet. It's kind of you gotta.
Is it Mike Pierce?
What's that?
Is it Mike Pierce?
No, it's not Mike Pierce. And besides, he just won his last fight. They normally don't put winners and losers together. And I also like Mike Pierce. I respect him a good bit. He's grown on me. I like how he fights. He gets it done, and I also like his kind of smart ass attitude. Kind of appreciating that.
Yeah, Mike Pierce actually likes to play computers. He likes to play computer games. He plays League of Legends and World of Warcraft. That'd be an interesting fight. I'd like to see that because you're both wrestlers with power punching. I think that'd be a good fight personally.
Interesting. But yeah, anyway, so I haven't really called out anyone, but it could happen in the near future. Because I want to fight soon. I don't want to sit on the shelf. So the quicker I make it happen, the quicker it'll happen.
Definitely. So no official call-outs yet, but stay tuned to Spaniard MMA for a call-out shortly, right?
This is true.
Yeah, so talking about the welterweight weight picture, probably one of the more jumbled up divisions at the top currently. You had that Diaz-Condit fight. I wanted to hear the opinion of another welterweight of that Diaz-Condit fight. What you thought of it? How Diaz was stalking and Condit was kind of backing up and circling away. Who did you get that fight to?
It was definitely a close fight, but I think the judges got it right. I think Condit won the fight. Just because you press doesn't mean that you're winning the fight. I think Condit did a great job of counter striking or defensive striking, moving backwards and angling out. When you fight someone, either one of the Diaz's, the bottom line is you're not going to push them into the cage. They're going to push you into the cage, and you have to use your footwork to get around.
Definitely. And I also wanted to fight about you getting involved with the AMA Fight Club out of New Jersey, I believe. They have a ton of guys, the Miller brothers, Jim and Dan. They got Mike Mazzanino, Jamie Varner, a bunch of guys. How did you get involved with them, and how long you've been with them?
Yeah, I've been with them for several years now, but it was through a contact who mentioned that he was training over in Jersey, and I didn't live too far away at that time, so he just spoke so highly of the guys, and I figured I'd check it out. I did, and it was it was a pretty darn good match.
Yeah, Charlie, it's been a pleasure to watch you, man, and I know you don't want to call anyone else out, so I just got to ask you one question. I mean, this is my question for every guest that we have here. What is Charlie Brenneman's favorite ice cream flavor?
My favorite what? Ice cream?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, those are the kind of questions I like. My favorite, I'm generally a plain vanilla guy, to be honest. A nice, good vanilla milkshake, maybe a malt vanilla milkshake is what I prefer. If I had to get into fancy flavors, I'd either go with chocolate chip cookie dough. That would probably be my one of my top cookies and cream. And then if I had to get really fancy, I'd go with Chubby Hubby, Ben & Jerry's Chubby Hubby.
Chubby Hubby, wow, nice.
I will buy you a Chubby Hubby milkshake if we ever hang out, sir.
That sounds like a plan.
Awesome.
A good plan.
Awesome, yeah, Charlie. It's really been an honor having you on. You spending time with us. You want to give any shout? Definitely follow him on Twitter at Spaniard MMA. That's SPANIARD MMA.
Yes, sir, that is correct. And Yeah, I guess the biggest shout out I want to give my strength and conditioning coach, who's also one of my best friends, just passed away last week. And take a couple minutes, check out No Limits Personal Training. You know, it hasn't been updated since his passing, but check out what he did, what No Limits was about, and what what our team was about.
Yeah. When I heard that story about you finding out about that pretty close to the fight, my heart really went out to you. It's always tough to lose a close friend, and we're definitely thinking about his family and friends, and hope you all can find peace down the road.
Well, greatly appreciate it, man. So all you guys out there listening, just check out NoLimitsPersonalTraining.com.
Definitely. No limits.
Charlie, thank you, sir, very much for putting your body on the line for our entertainment. I could never possibly think of what it'd be like to go out there and do what you do. Thank you. And I hope you have a
My
good
pleasure.
Thanks
right
so
back
much,
at
Charlie.
you guys. I enjoyed it.
Put a beating on those wings. We'll talk to you later.
Later.
All right, so wow, we're now 4 for 4 on having awesome dudes on the MMA podcast for interviews. That was really amazing. All of them really have great stories too. You know, it's great how every single fighter's got a really unique story about how they parlayed their lives into a career where they punch people in the face and get recognized for it, but at the same time can somehow maintain being nice, personable members of society.
Yeah, that was incredible, man. Eddie, Charlie, thank you very much for coming on. You guys were awesome, and this is really a fucking excellent example of a journey, how you can go out there and try and, make your way into something, and it happens. Thank you guys.
Yeah, you know what? It's our second episode. We're still a little rough. Still got a speed bump every now and then. I'll listen back and I'll be kicking myself in the ass because I'll hear so many ums and you knows. But we're really honored to have people like that on the podcast, and we're really honored to have so many listeners. I mean, I was looking at the statistics for people who listened to the first episode, and it blew me away. So even more than anything else, whoever's listening, if you're listening right now, thank you so much for staying tuned. It's a rough, but we promise to keep on getting better, keep on bringing you the best podcast humanly possible. We're real people. You're a real person. I'm a reptilian cyborg hybrid. And fighters are real people too. Remember that. Except some are reptilian cyborg hybrids like me. No response. All right, and that's a good example of us being. No, I'm here. I just wanted to leave you hanging. That is what a good co-host does. I love you, man, and I love this. Good job, everybody. Yeah, so definitely, if you are listening in live, this is a live show. Most people do listen to it archived either on Blog Talk Radio or on iTunes. But if you are listening in live, we do have a couple more things we're thinking about talking about, the World Jiu-Jitsu Championships, and a little bit more into the whole Ronda Rousey cyborg issue. But we do still have about 5 or 6 minutes left. So if you want to call in, the number is 646-378-1046, 646-378-1046. Call in, we'll take your calls. Tweet at us, and we will gladly tweet back or mention your tweet. No one tweet us anything during any of the interviews, but if anyone does want to tweet us at the MMA Podcast, we'll try and get your question in. So we don't have any callers yet, but let's move down into the fake countdown at the Mundials, the World Jiu-Jitsu Championship. That was really kind of bonkers, and I was not happy with it at all. You said it was the fault of the fighter for standing up, but I don't really think that. If you're not aware with what happened, there was a match, and what happened was the guy who ended up winning the fight got the entire crowd to initiate a fake countdown. So they did 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. and they counted it down to a point where there was still 5 or 10 seconds in the fight. So the man who ended up losing the fight, who was winning, stood up thinking the fight's over, only to get taken down, put inside control, lost by points. And I thought that was straight bullshit.
Well, you basically kind of summed up what I was going to say. I think it's, these guys are professionals. You spend your whole life grappling, and you basically don't do anything until the ref stops you. So if he stood to the crowd, he's an idiot, and I don't really have anything to say beyond that. Stupid, dumb move. Really
stupid, dumb.
That guy doesn't know what he's doing, and that's it. That's it.
Definitely, I know where you are coming from, and it is the responsibility of these guys to fight until they know that it's gonna be ended by a ref. But you can't blame them. If you fought in 100 grappling matches, you're used to people counting down the clock. Down the clock 0 and it's over. So I see where you're coming from, but part of it almost comes with just straight muscle memory and remembering things and knowing, hey, the crowd's counting it down. I think that was just a shameless move by the fighter, and obviously now people aren't going to be trusting these countdowns.
Yeah, but this will blame the crowd. Oh, why are you trying to trick him? That's stupid. The only thing he should worry about is the referee coming in and stopping him. That's it. Don't listen to the crowd. Every fighter out there says they don't listen to the crowd, and there's the perfect reason why. Don't listen to the crowd.
But hey, that mob mentality, it's hard not to. Even when someone wins a fight, if the whole crowd's booing you, the guy's probably not going to have a smile on his face. The not listening to the crowd is so much more easily said than done.
I say it's tomato. Not going to agree with you on that.
I say tomato. It's a really not been the greatest year for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Diaz controversy not showing up to the Braulio Estima super fight. You had a fighter disqualified, or a grappler being disqualified from the World Jiu-Jitsu Championships, literally just for jumping over a tiny barrier to talk to a referee, and he was the coach of another fighter and was scheduled to fight later on. I think it was Galvao, one of the top guys in his division. So not been a good series of events at all for jiu-jitsu whatsoever. But they say there's no such thing as bad publicity, so it's definitely gotten grappling on the map a little bit more.
Yeah, ultimately, if you and me disagree or anyone else disagrees, that's fine. It's a different opinion.
Not okay.
Oh, no, it really is fine, because that's the beauty of it. We have differing opinions. If everyone agreed, it'd be a really boring place to live.
Might be okay with you.
That's what I love.
Might be okay with you, but if anybody disagrees, there's about to be a fight.
I'll fight.
Speaking of fights, there's one fight this weekend, Show Fight 20, Parisian Gunner. Not really that notable enough to go really deep into. Touch on women's MMA real quick before we send it off with a little Van Halen. Coker saying Cyborg Rousey will happen, which kind of isn't giving Sarah Kaufman any sort of credit at all, who's scheduled to fight Rousey next. But everyone thinks Rousey's going to go through Kaufman, and I'm looking forward to Cyborg versus Rousey. Her suspension ends January 6, 2013. She won the gold at the 135 Mundials, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that lady is a beast. I saw her get caught in a Tito Ortiz triangle in the training video, and she lifted Tito Ortiz up, who's 230 pounds, 3 or 4 feet off the ground, and slammed him down.
So
what
sexy.
A beast.
So
what
sexy.
A beast.
So sexy. So, thank you everybody for tuning in. Hope there weren't any cringe-worthy moments. I know the beginning of the first episode was a little hard to bear, but we're really happy you decided to tune in. What'd you learn today, Chris?
I learned that Eddie Wineland and I learned that Charlie Brenneman are amazing people, and Charlie Brenneman was a school teacher. Didn't know that.
Today I learned that Charlie Brenneman could pummel you around eating wings just like he pummeled Rick Story around the ring last year during UFC Live. Congo Berry.
Love it.
So, thank you again for tuning in. Next week, we're going to have a special show. 99% of our shows are going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern on Wednesdays, but we got a little conflict, so it'll either be Wednesday afternoon or Tuesday night. Go on themmmapodcast.com, and we'll keep you updated on when the next pod's going to be. We're going to have Jeff Hoagland on. That's sure to be a great interview. I got a friend who trains out with him, says he's a great guy. So, until next week, I'm Jake.
Goodbye. I'm Chris.
I'm Jake. Goodbye. Take it easy, everybody.